Our scripture readings today the first one is from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 34 and 35. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Our second scripture reading is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 to 40. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Our responsive.
Won't you please be seated? At this time, it is my good and great joy to invite Reverend Mike Davis, and Steve Carrolls also is going to be sharing in the presentation to share with us about Guatemala. So please do that. And also I wanted to just remind you that after the presentation, when we have our offering, there is a special envelope. If you would like to contribute to the Guatemala Mission, that would be beautiful.
Before I begin, I need to bring you a word of greeting from your former district superintendent, Jan, who I happen to know very well. She is enjoying her retirement and raising a puppy, and sends her love and greeting to all of you. And I want to say what a pleasure it is to be back with you again. It seems like when I come, I talk about Guatemala, but it's great to be with you. And I especially want to extend my thanks for your support of the Guatemala Mission and this important work, your support of Steve and the work that he does as a part of the mission. So thank you very much. A couple brief facts about Guatemala. There are over 14 million people who live in Guatemala, and about half of them live in Guatemala City. The rest are spread around the countryside. Guatemala is the poorest country in the world, and the poorest country in Central America, and the fourth poorest country in the world. This has powerful implications for the daily lives and future hopes of our Guatemalan neighbors. The average income is $1 a day per person. Imagine living on $1 a day per family member. Consider the choices you'd have to make around basics like food and clothing, shelter, healthcare, and education. This leaves no safety net for the unexpected challenges of life except for family and community. In April of this year, a team traveled to Cunan, Guatemala in the Western Highlands. The team was 16 members that represented 12 different congregations and came from 6 different states. It came from as far away as Tennessee and Georgia and Indiana. We went to Cunan, which is a village of about 30,000 people, and is surrounded by another 30,000 people in the villages that live around it. Cunan is in a bowl surrounded by mountains. Most of them are volcanic mountains. There's little access to health care or clean water there. The average education is second grade. Most people drop out by second grade. One of the reasons is in the Guatemalan public schools at second grade you need to be able to understand and speak Spanish. It is not the native language of the Mayans who we serve. They have another dialect called Quiche, and so often by second grade they can no longer keep up and they drop out. They also drop out because their families need them to work in order to provide food for the family. About 50% of the children in this region do not see their 6th birthday. You won't find these figures in the national figures reported by the Guatemalan government. We've learned this from the people in that region that we serve and the people who work with them. 50% don't see their 6th birthday. So imagine living in a remote location. It's isolated. You have limited access to the things that you need. Travel is difficult. Imagine living there with your family, struggling to provide food and shelter, and then a family member gets sick and there's no health care. Imagine chronic illness that is treatable, but not for you. Care is hours away, and the choice is sometimes literally between choosing to go hungry or to see a doctor, even if you can find one. Salud y Paz, which is the umbrella organization that we work with, has clinics throughout this region of Guatemala, and through their teams like ours, they go into remote villages and offer much needed health care for the people of the Mayan villages. They also are the folks who support and sponsor the clinic that we serve together. It is this region, the churches and people of this region, that enabled that clinic to become open and help to keep it open. Steve is going to share about one portion of our mission trip, the water part. Steve, you're going to need the microphone. So.
Good morning.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about clean water. You know, everyone takes clean water for granted. You wash your cars with it, you bathe with it, obviously you drink with it, do your dishes, that type of stuff. Imagine if you're living in a culture where the clean water is full of, or the water is full of pathogens, and just by brushing your teeth and taking the toothbrush and running it under the water, you now infect yourself. I've been working with, was my 4th trip to Guatemala. One time I asked one of the medical providers why they didn't treat for the waterborne diseases, because almost everyone has them. And the answer was that what good would it do as soon as we treat them and they go off to drugs, they get reinfected by the city water. See, the water comes out of streams that's not treated. Here we have water treatment plants that treat the water that we use for everything. There, they don't have that. They can either boil the water, or if they're rich enough, they can buy bottled water to drink from. But most of the Mayans are not rich enough to do that. Some of them boil water, some of them just drink the water and suffer the consequences. So my dream that I had was to come up with a village water purification system. Next slide, please. So what did we do? Well, we built 4 systems here in the U.S. I have an engineering partner who just recently retired, and he had enough time to actually put the 4 systems together that I had designed for him. And we hand carried 4 systems down in suitcases. We traveled down to Guatemala, we flew out of Logan early in the morning through Miami, got another airplane and flew into Guatemala City. You can see it there in the, where the red arrow points. Now, Guatemala is sort of like the wild, wild west. It's dangerous at night. You don't want to be traveling at night. So the team took extra cautions to make sure that we arrived during daylight hours so we can get into the bus, and from there we traveled up to Chichicastenango. Next slide, please. So you can see the ride there, and we spent the night there. And we always worked as a team. The ground rules were don't travel at night, always have 2 people together wherever you go, always let your team leaders know where you are. So very, very safe. I felt very safe in this team. Next slide. And then the next day we went up to Cunan that Mike showed you some of the pictures of. So again, mountainous roads, took about 3 or 4 hours to get up there. And the next 4 days I spent on the water purification systems. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to do is to deploy and test 3 village water purification systems as a pilot project. Now, these systems are designed to support up to 200 people, and that would meet the World Health Organization requirements for potable water per person. In addition, 1 additional unit was delivered as a spare, and plus we also had 1 year's worth of spares that were also delivered. This time we did something a little different. We also brought along little vials that you pour the water into, and we did water purification tests, pass, fail. So it's a little vial, you put water into it, you wait 20 or 48 hours, and if it turns green, it's bad. If it stays sort of yellow, then it's good. It's a pass, fail. Next slide. So looking at, there's 3 slides there. The far left is looking from the inside of the Cunan clinic to the inside bathroom, and there was water coming out of the wall. So we tapped into that, and you can see this the middle slide where I'm grabbing some PVC. We ran it on the inside into the wall to an outside laboratory. On the right side is the outside laboratory that would be available to the community. Bathroom, and also you can see the village water purification system. It's a 12-inch by 12-inch by 6-inch box. The white thing on the bottom is a sedimentation filter to remove any particles coming in. And then the water, there's a little microcomputer in there, goes through a ultraviolet filter and neutralizes any pathogens in there. People press the button, out comes clean water. And as long as they hold the button down, the water keeps on coming out. It's a very, very simple to use. Next slide, please. That's the outside of the clinic. That's the medical clinic that was opened up by the Methodist Church through Saluti Paz. And you can see on the right side, there's that blue area. That's a standard Guatemalan outside sink. And then behind that is the outside bathroom that people can get access to. And it's controlled by a local pastor, Pastor Alejandro. And he's watching over the area to make sure no one tampers with it. So that was our first project, was to get that system installed into the publicly accessible restroom so that people can use it. The reason we put it in the restroom was sometimes drunk people come by, according to the pastor, and might damage the system. So that's where he wanted it put, and that's where we put it. Next slide, please. System number 2 was installed in the local pastor's home. And you say, well, why a home? Because it's on the outside of the home, and all the villagers within the local area who know him now have access to it. Again, you see on the right side, that's the pastor, and just to our left is one of those blue outside sinks. Water comes in, turns on. People normally brush their teeth, drink water from that, do everything with that contaminated water. So this way they can push the button, and they have now access to both drinking water and water to wash dishes and to do other things that are required with the clean water. You can see on the left side, that's the complete system itself. We brought the PVC up through a shutoff valve into the unit, brought electricity down from their overhead lines, brought it in, and that's where unit number 2 went. Next slide, please. Unit number 3 was installed in one of his parishioners' house, and was sort of across the road and up a hill, so it was serving a different neighborhood. And again, we listened to the owner and tapped into his existing water system, or water piping that he had, brought that up, brought the water down, and put the unit where he wanted it. So it's very important to listen to the local people, rather than just as Americans come in and say, okay, we know what you want, here, take this. We need to listen to them, to have them become part of the solution and to take ownership for it, or else it just doesn't get used. So you can see that's the family. The tall guy on the right was from Saluti Paz, named John, and the other was, the one in the middle is the actual parishioners, the father of the family. Next slide. So what did we do? We delivered 4 systems, 3 operational units plus 1 spare. We worked closely with the Saluti Paz people. They were the ones, the non-government organization that oversees the activities that we're involved in. We made friends with several Guatemalan families, and it was a very successful trip. Next slide.
So another part of the work that we do is the medical part. We had 2 medical providers with us who saw patients. We had a couple of nurses with us, and then just people, just normal lay people doing as a part of the medical team. In the time that we were there, we saw 340 patients in 4 days in 3 villages, a total of 3 villages. We dispensed about 70,000 vitamins. Now, that may not seem like a big deal, but the last trip we went on, but prior to this trip, was a medical team, and we ran out of vitamins. And so we went to the local pharmacy to buy them and discovered that they were going to cost us $1 per pill. If you make $1 a day per family member, you're not going to spend that dollar on vitamins for your family. So this was a tremendous gift. Most people went away with 120 days worth of vitamins, and their family members as well. We would send them for the patients and for their family members. I want to share a bit about the medical team's work, but I'm going to do it in a little different way. I'm going to share from snippets from emails that were sent back home by our co-leader, Linda Brewster, and you can find the whole piece, all of the entire emails, in a travel log that we've put on our webpage. But I'm just going to share little snippets to give you a flavor for what it's like to work on the medical teams. The medical team is headed back to Chul. It's market day in Chul today, so we expect to be even busier. We saw 72 patients yesterday, which is amazing. The town of Chul is very poor, and patients don't have money to get the medications they need or to get the care that is recommended. We give as much medication as we can, but it's hard when you need eye care and can't afford to get to the clinic in Kamacha for the care. In this town, we saw more diabetes and hypertension. I also saw a lot of eye conditions from sun exposures. They don't have sunglasses. Later on, she writes, no medicine for vertigo, no antidepressants or medications for folks who have lost babies recently who were alone and scared, no counseling, no ability to deal with a baby with 104.7 temperature and a history of 1 month of diarrhea and a 10-day cough, as well as being so lethargic, I had to look closely to see if she was breathing. We sent her to the local hospital. Later on, and then I get over myself and realize how much we have as a team offered. And tonight I was reminded that God takes all of that and makes us so much more of it. So much so that we may never be in the place to know the impact of offering ourselves and the meager offerings we brought. I needed that reminder tonight and was grateful for it. It was an easier day today. People were not as sick. There was a ton of heartburn in children and adults, I assume because of the consumption of spicy foods and coffee at a very early age. Many women work in the fields and wear very flimsy, flat shoes, and so I saw a lot of knee and leg pain, as well as back pain from bending over in the fields. Later on, one man I saw was sent to the hospital for a workup for chest pain. He's 43 and has had 3 months of pain in the chest and shortness of breath with exertion. It's so bad he can't work to support his wife and 7 children. So his wife and some of the children have had to work to feed the family. I pray for all of the folks in all of the places that we have visited. Each person touches a part of my heart, and my heart retains a piece of them. Good things hearts can overflow without pain. Another portion of our work was doing some construction work at the clinic itself, and it was primarily applying stucco to the building exterior, the overhang for the roof and the posts. I can tell you from experience that is dirty work. I had cement dust in places where it just simply does not belong. The clinic we support is up and running 1 weekend a month. It costs them around $500 a weekend just for the medication they give out. The traffic to the clinic is building, but funding and finding medical personnel to staff the clinic are both significant challenges. Currently, staff members from another clinic of Saluti Paz travel several hours once a month to go and serve at that clinic. They have to stay overnight at the one hotel in the town, and then they work in the morning, and again they travel home, again traveling during daylight. The need is great, but relationships and trust have to be built in order for the clinic to be successful, and that is growing. They're seeing more and more traffic at the clinic as the people of the village who have not had access for health care and those surrounding villages begin to come and trust and tell their neighbors about the clinic's work. As I think about mission and as I think about following Jesus, I recognize in my own life and in the life of others that following Jesus moves us outside of ourselves. I've invited Steve to share a little bit about what it has meant for him and his journey.
This was my fourth mission trip. I recall back to the first mission trip. We had a team building activity beforehand, and people were going around and talking about if they had been on missions before, what it was like. And they got to me, and I told them my last mission was Vietnam, and it was a slightly different activity. We weren't there to help people. So the first trip for me was rather tough, in that this is my first time since Vietnam. I was to a third world country. In addition, they had just come out of a civil war not many years ago, and there were a lot of soldiers around with automatic weapons, and for me it was some interesting flashback type of times. But the Lord has sort of addressed that and healed that within me over the course of those 4 mission trips. In addition to my internal stuff, the Lord's given me this vision for water purification, for clean water, especially for the little kids. And so through your support, through this circuit, I've been able to go to the 4 different mission activities, sometimes on construction, sometimes on medical, this last time on a water trip. And it's been really a challenge and a period of growth for me. Things that Mike's right, you'll never really realize until you go how much you can be changed. And the friends that we make over there, I may not see them again. Who knows? I don't know where I'll be assigned if I go back, but they will be friends that I will remember forever, for eternity. If I feel safe on those trips, it's very, very well thought out, well controlled. Guatemala is sort of like the Old West. You don't travel at night. Our team, we always go together in at least 2 people. We always tell the team leaders where we're going to be at. And so as a consequence of that, I feel very safe being on a mission trip. I think each of us has got goals and dreams that God has put into our lives. I would challenge you to search yours and see if it relates to the Guatemala Mission. Love to have you come along. Thank you.
I wanted to share a little bit as well. I've gone on 5 trips, and the work that we do, it feels sometimes like a drop in the bucket, but that's how buckets fill up sometimes, is a drop at a time. The work that we do is always deeply appreciated by the folks that we meet. I go for that work, but I also go because of what it does for me. It has changed my life in some pretty strong ways. The first trip I went on, I have to confess to you, I was terrified. I thought about backing out right up until the time I got on the plane. I thought, you are crazy. I'd never been to a developing country. I'd never been to a country where at least I could count on many of the people speaking English, or where I didn't know the language. And frankly, I don't know Spanish. My repertoire is up to about 10 words now, but I relearn them each time I go. So I went scared, and I found that experience of stepping outside of what I was comfortable pushed me to trust God more and made space in my heart to learn things that I've knew in my head but had never really integrated into my life. Things about how, when I come home, how I see other people who are different than me, how I'm more open to people who are from other countries and from other life experiences, and how I've come to know that I have brothers and sisters in Guatemala, and that together in God we are one. I believe that following Jesus takes us outside of ourselves. Some of you may know in February, I woke up one morning on February 19th, and I could not close my right eye. I could not move the right side of my mouth, and I thought maybe something might be wrong. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Jan got up and I said, hey, does my face look funny to you? At 9 o'clock, we saw my doctor. By 1 o'clock, I'd been to the hospital. I'd had a CAT scan, an MRI, an EKG, a chest x-ray, blood work, and was diagnosed with Bell's palsy, a condition that most people recover from. There were some medications that would help speed it along a little bit, and medications for pain. If I lived in Guatemala, I would have woken up that morning in these villages, and I would not have any of those things. I would be left with my fear and my uncertainty about what was happening to me and what would happen to me. I remember that, as I feel so blessed to be well now. A little bit can go a long way. So maybe as you think about following Jesus and in your own life, not all of us are called to go to Guatemala. Maybe some of you are, and we'd love to talk to you. But not everybody is. But you may be feeling in your own life God nudging you to step out of what's most comfortable to maybe something that's not as comfortable, to some activity of love, of compassion, of generosity, of mercy. It might come on a trip, a mission trip somewhere, but it might be to do something for a neighbor, to take part in making your community a better place. It might be someone who needs you to be their friend. It might be a kind word to that harried cashier, or the lack of words to the person who cuts you off in traffic. See, I think following Jesus moves us out of ourselves and moves us to love. John's Gospel, this passage that we read from John's Gospel today, they will know you by how you love each other, actually became a reality in the first 3 centuries of the church. They were known by outsiders by the way they loved. They loved each other, and they loved those least loved. It moves us to acts of love, and love is an act. It's an activity. It's something we do. As Jesus said, when you feed somebody who's hungry, when you take care of someone who's sick, when you welcome a stranger, you welcome me. Those are acts of love. And mission is not just something people do off somewhere else. I invite you to think of it as a way of living life, that each day we're on a mission for God in our families, in our neighborhood, in our community, and beyond. It's a way of seeing the world. I believe God invites us to be missionaries to our neighborhood and our community and beyond, to live the way of Jesus. Remember, Jesus said, love each other just as I have loved you, so also you must love each other. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, when you love each other. And from Matthew's Gospel, we understand that love to be beyond just those here around us, but far beyond. So I hope that you'll keep in your prayers the Guatemala Mission. All your support is deeply helpful and makes a difference in the lives of the people we serve there. You can find more information on our webpage or contact us, and we always have work for people of all abilities. The first medical team I went on, I was the only member of the team who couldn't find a pulse, my own. But I was able to count pills. That was important. So God's blessing on you as you listen to that nudging, that gentle push, or maybe it's stronger than that in your life, to step out in love. Amen.